is that society around us is in danger of rotting from within. With increase in knowledge, but not gains in peace or morality. The spiral is downward, not upward. So what do? Is withdrawal the answer? Should we protect ourselves from corruption? No, Jesus says we are to be salt. Salt is rubbed into the meat to preserve it. We are to rub shoulders with people, even those with a radically different worldview, but make it our conscious effort to influence them instead of allowing their faults to corrupt us. As salt of the earth, we are to help save the world from self-destruction. Salt also does a wonderful job building an appetite. Particularly, American food, particularly if it's in restaurants or the prepared food section of the grocery store, it's often oversalted. More than once, I've heard people who are forced to eat a low-salt diet, they say the food doesn't have any flavor anymore. If you've ever struggled with caring for someone who has no desire to eat, you know that making the food appetizing can actually save their lives. So Christians, as the salt of the earth, are called to create an appetite for life in the family of God. We want to motivate our neighbors, stuck in this culture that's headed over the waterfall, want to motivate them to change boats so they can change direction. We want them to join the family of God. We need to help them see how attractive it is to build their appetite. Now, we know that in addition to adding flavor, another reason restaurants promote salty food is they want to sell you more to drink. Those street tortilla chips aren't because the waiter is generous, folks. In the same way, we are called to stimulate a thirst for God in others. Jesus said to let others see your good works so they glorify your Father in heaven. The goal is for those whose life you have opportunities to influence to say, I want to be someone my boss can entrust more responsibility to, like that. I want a marriage more like that. I want to walk with God like that. Stimulate a thirst for God. Be the salt of the earth. And Jesus also says you are the light of the world. Now, what does light do? Well, first of all, it prevents stumbling. We put lights on the stairway so that no one stumbles, falls down the stairs, and hurts themselves. Light helps you know where you are going. When we explain the ways of God, not in church language, but in everyday terms, we're helping people choose the right path, like streetlights having otherwise dark corners. Light is essential for life. The other thing that grows in the dark is mold. So if we don't want a fungus among us, we will seek to be light for the world. As was true for Saul, the call to be light is the call to help keep the world from self-destruction through spoilage. And light is the form of stumbling we call crime. The slum outside St. Andrew's School in Kenya was ravaged by crime. They installed lights for the path of the school to the village where the students lived. Not only did crime go down, academic performance improved. When Jesus talked about being light, he described two things that are placed high to improve our ability to see. The candlestand is placed high around the whole house, to light the whole house. And the city is set on a hill. It's set there so that all can see. God will put his children where others can see us. And it's our job to be examples. Doesn't mean we have to pretend that things are always good. The world is very interested in how we handle the tough times. God is with us. God will help us. Tough times don't last, but the the steadfast love of the Lord never fails. God has set you in a physical place, as a teacher, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a citizen, to be an example. Now, Kathy read to us from the book of Acts. We heard the adventures of Paul and Silas in the city of Philippi. What happened there, that Paul and Silas freed a young woman who was held in a double captivity. And we get an interesting look into the life of someone who's been caught up in the occult. Her first captivity was spiritual. Fortune telling is often an absolute fraud. But sometimes there are people who claim that their gift is something others would want. But this young woman knew better. She knew different. The evil spirit within her ruled her life, so that in addition to the slavers controlling her outer life, she wasn't even in control of her thoughts and actions. When Paul and Silas encountered her, they also realized that her mortal life was held captive as well. The slavers only valued her as means of making money, but the Christians saw a child of God. Slavers see her as a means of money, Christians see her as a child of God. They couldn't prevent slavery, they couldn't fight slavery in that cultural context, but they could cut the legs out from underneath it by preventing the human traffickers from making money off of oppressing her. See, there is a spiritual world, there is a spiritual underworld. But Jesus Christ is Lord over all. Paul freed her and made her human captors feel the heat. Now, if there was ever a time when a good deed went unpunished, here it was. The slavers don't care a whit that a human being that they enslaved has been delivered from an oppression. They only care about the shackles and the drachmas. They seize the Christians, haul them to the judge, and say, these Jews are encouraging beliefs not practiced by us Romans. And the way it's written there is exactly the same kind of structure. Them being Jews, they set up practices that we can observe being Romans. It's a deliberate either or, supposedly. And there's an interesting tension here between not resisting evil, between turning the other cheek, and demanding our legal rights. Now, when do you do which? If you try to be a Christian above the world, you will face this challenge. Paul and Silas land in jail. They are in prison, but God uses it. We read about what happened in jail that night last month when we looked at the Philippian jailer. God uses unjust situation to bring life to an entire household. But then, when they let Paul out, the officials say, oh, whoops, you go down. Paul said, not so fast. You jailed me without a trial, and guess what? I'm a Roman too. I'm a Roman citizen. Paul demanded his rights, really not for his own sake, but so that the gospel could progress unimpeded from that time forward. Now, in the scripture readings, from the Sermon on the Mount especially, you heard the word you. You are. Almost every one of those times is plural. You guys, y'all. We are to be light and the salt together. Some people can't make it to a public church service, especially now. But Christian fellowship remains essential. The phone calls, the cards, the visits, socially distanced. We need fellow travelers on the Lord's path. It's an essential. Excuse me. The neighbor you pray with, the relative you bring a CD to of the services. It makes you an essential employee for the kingdom of God. I'm glad that this next little bit, because when Christians migrated to Boston in the 1600s, one of their leaders was this fellow named John Winthrop. Perhaps you've heard of him. Church he served over was called the Winthrop Church. But Winthrop gathered the population together and he said, "We must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us, so that if we shall deal falsely with our God in this work we have undertaken," settling Boston, "and so cause it to withdraw its present help from us, we shall be made a story and a byword throughout the world." By byword, he was saying the world expected them to be a failure. They could become a laughing stock. But the phrase "the city on a hill" used to describe the expectation that Massachusetts Bay Colony would shine like an example in the world. But what he was also saying, he expected Massachusetts to differ from the rest of the world. And that was all the more appropriate because, maybe if you know the scene, well, this was a prominent hill, and in fact it was 80 feet taller in Winthrop's day. They lowered it to make it more habitable and to fill in where water was, sand land. But on that hill, in times of emergency, a fire would be lit to alert everyone. That fire state capital, fun fact, is on what is now called Beacon Hill, responsible to give light to all around. And God is not done using churches to be salt and light. At the risk of testing our tech challenges today of all days, I wanted you to see an example of a modern-day Congregational church that's being planted in Erie, Pennsylvania. The church is called The Cross, not just because that's where Jesus died for us, but also because it's the local name for a key intersection in this inner city spot where the church is located. Let's watch that video together. Please.
God definitely brings people here. And it's cool to see people that have come into our church really just looking for food or a place to sit, and a year down the road have followed Christ and stepped up in our church.
They're hurting, they're hungry, they're tired, and it's okay to be that way here. And the ones of us that are having good times love and hug the other ones, and we take turns.
Really just support, support. I'm homeless right now, and they've supported me through it all without judgment or criticism and stuff like that. So.
The Cross exists to reach people in the city, downtown, to be a cross-center community that reaches the culture and the culture of this downtown area. Erie's a buckle of the Rust Belt. In a region that's been decimated by changes in industry, Erie's been able to maintain itself and thrive in spite of losing Hammermill and declines in Lord and GE transportation. We've seen a growth in plastics, producing 10% of the nation's plastics. We've seen a growth in education with places like LECOM graduating more doctors than any other school. And we've seen opportunities for investment downtown to see this area thrive beyond the region. This is the heart of Erie right here, 40 square blocks, where if you'd like to get a nice place to eat, if you want to go play, if you work, you come here. But the people that live in this neighborhood are the ones that deal with the most desperate poverty.
I had been in prison for a couple of years, and when I was released, the prison sort of just dumped me here in the city. And I was in a mission for some time, and afterwards I was bounced from sort of one shelter to another.
Broken people walk into the Cross, and when you're in the Cross in that community, there's not distinctions as to who's who. So those relationships you're able to build as equally made in the image of God can drive you towards the gospel. And we're seeing broken people come to Christ through the relationships with the people serving here.
And one Sunday I came past here and there were people coming in, and I just was curious, and I walked in, and the moment I walked through the door, Chuck walks up and he shakes hands with me, and people are hugging me and giving me handshakes, and I thought, that's maybe a million times before, and I felt like that I belonged here, that this is where I should be, and I just kept coming back, and I really enjoyed it.
Church being salt and light. Well, the same way, clearly, FCC see Hanson's called to be light and salt to the world. We're called to preserve. You know, I am proud of the learning that's going on here. The teaching that Bob's done, that the Grays are doing, that Keith Myers has done, and others, our Sunday school efforts as well. You see, we all need to be ready to give answers that beat back a particularly poisonous mentality in our culture today. It's a what's the use mentality. We encounter it all the time. What's the use? That attitude is growing, but every success story, every story like Cross Church and all the others, is light that shines in the darkness. Light beats back the darkness. That's what's the use, you might say. And because despair is so prominent, our neighbors have often lost their appetite for the heavenly banquet. By our words, by our actions, we need to demonstrate that everyone is valuable. The Arthurs that we meet. We need to stimulate people's thirst for the water of life that Jesus Christ is offering. I believe we need to share stories of what God can do in the lives of the ones that the world discards. Because everyone is valuable here. Everyone. Just as that slave girl in Philippi was being discarded. Earlier in their fostering of Jesus Medina, Kate reflected on both the effort required and the worthwhile nature of that effort. She described part of their journey with a scared and scarred boy who had come to live in their hearts. Kate wrote this: 4 weeks of school done, and I have one very done 7-year-old. This kiddo doesn't really relax. His central nervous system always sending panic alert signals. But today he fell asleep after breakfast, briefly. He awoke startled and mad that he had let his guard down, jumped off of me on the couch and started yelling, "No!" He rubbed his eyes, crossed his arms, and stomped onto the bus. Mid-morning I get a text from his teacher. He fell asleep reading books. I rearranged my day. I pick him up early afternoon. Take him home. The house is quiet. The sun is quiet. I hold him close and I lay down. I put a weighted blanket all the way up over us. Sleep, I tell him. It's okay. And he does. Within 40 seconds. He sleeps and sleeps and sleeps. I am pinned on the couch. My cell battery dies. I try to add up how many hours I've spent in my life not moving because I don't want to wake up a baby. Many hours. This is love, I think. As my arm goes to sleep, my to-do list fades. All reading material just a close, but impossible 13 inches away. I have 50 pounds of kid and weighted blanket on my chest. It feels like 2 minutes, then an eternity, and then 2 minutes. Basically how all of life, all of time goes. There's the afternoon, I think, while I am pinned. I won't get anything done. But still, he sleeps. And I know a resting place for a child is not a wasted life. The story of providing a home for Jesus Spadino. It stimulates a thirst in me, and I think it does for some of you too. As we let others know how surpassingly beautiful it is to live under the care of the Great Shepherd, we will motivate our neighbors to join the family of God. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you. Thank you that you left the 99 to come find us. And you call us to do the same. Thank you that a resting place for any of your children is not a wasted life. Help us, Lord, to love those that you put in our life beyond the resistance of someone who's scared, or someone who's been wounded. Help us to be more patient and more strong than that resistance. And I also pray, Lord, that we might take a little bit of a moment now, together before you, just allow you to speak to us about where and how you want us to be salt and light. Speak to us, Lord. Lord, help us to support one another. Show us where we need to work together. Show us where we need to send someone into a particular work. And help, please, Lord. Let your kingdom thrive in and beyond us. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. The hymn is, Lord, speak to me that I may speak. Would you stand, please?
The intro in with the last one.
O Lord, send us forth, speaking through us, acting through us. And Lord, help us each to so walk in your light, so endued with your Spirit, that our lives resound as a song of praise to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.